The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Save the Second or their employers. This show offers commentary on the latest news associated with the National Rifle Association and Save the Second's endeavor to promote a strong, relevant, effective, and accountable NRA. Welcome to the Save the Second podcast, episode 6. Today is Sunday, October 13th, 2019. In this episode, we'll be discussing Oliver North, 2A rally, and more. Proud to be streaming live on both Facebook now and YouTube, where you can ask questions, post comments, and more. This show will be available on your favorite podcast streaming source and our website tomorrow. Joining us on today's show are Anthony Garcia. Anthony, how are you, sir?
Good. I'm doing quite well on this wonderful Sunday afternoon. How are you today, Ron?
Dude, I'm so worn out. This is my only day off in 9 days. So, oh, buddy, it's it is packed full. But I'm so happy to be here, and I'm always happy to listen to your sultry, wonderful voice, Mr. Garcia. We'll have Rob Pincus. Join us here in just a few moments. It's been an interesting week. We haven't had a whole lot of news come out, but one of the most interesting bits of news this week was concerning Oliver North and the lawsuit of the NRA versus Oliver North. A lot of persons who may be watching this may not even know who Oliver North is. What do you say, Anthony? Should we take him back to the beginning?
Yeah, let's go back in time a little bit, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't understand where Ollie North came from and why he was controversial in the first place.
Okay, so Oliver North, he's had a very interesting career. He is a prior service Marine. He was born October 7th, 1943, so he's in his 70s now. In fact, he just had his birthday, right? October 7th was his birthday, so he's 76 years old. He was, of course, in the Marine Corps, commissioned to the rank of lieutenant colonel, so not full bird. He was convicted in the Iran-Contra affair of the late 1980s, but his convictions were vacated and reversed, and all charges against him were dismissed in 1991. So very, very interesting. Obviously, we won't get into the Iran-Contra affair, but it's interesting to note that that's where he has his origins. He did become something of a media persona with Fox News, did some history shows as well. Vietnam veteran. He was awarded the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and a couple Purple Hearts. So, he took contact and apparently returned it with extreme prejudice. So a lot of folks will see him as a war hero, but also perhaps tainted by the Iran-Contra controversy and whatnot. Anthony, what are your opinions on Mr. North?
So I don't really want to delve too much into the 1980s and the Iran-Contra thing. We can go back to where he was first elected into the NRA. I thought it was an odd choice at the time. I understand he became somewhat of a right-wing firebrand, you might say, with Fox News and commenting a lot. A lot of people liked him. I still just thought it was an odd choice, having to do with his background from the 80s. I would not have expected him. Now that being said, after reading a lot about him and listening to what he said and what he tried to do, I gained a lot more respect for him in kind of a retrospect. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and by the way, Anthony, Clover Tack Productions is in our Facebook feed, and he's saying that your audio is very low. Why don't you change that?
how's that? Is that better?
Maybe a little too much. Bring it down just a tad
There
bit.
you go, right there.
Oh, that's sweet. That's perfect.
All right.
So yeah, Oliver North is he's interesting, but of course he was elected as a board of director. I can't exactly remember when that was. Maybe we have that on our website. Let's see if I can find that real fast. But he was elected by the members to be a board of director. Now, of course, there's 76 board of directors within our National Rifle Association, and so that's a heck of a number. But he really stood out. He became the president of the NRA in, what was it, 2018, 2017?
Yeah, I believe 2017. I'm looking here right now, see if I can find him. Yeah, he was the president in 2018. That's when he became the president.
Right. And he was elected president after Pete Brownell stepped down as the president. Of course, Pete Brownell later resigned entirely from the board of directors. Oliver North has not done that. Oliver North's resignation appeared to us at the NRA annual meeting in April of this year. In fact, Richard Childress, who was then the first vice president of the NRA, read his resignation letter to everyone in attendance at the beginning of the annual meeting, the members meeting in Indianapolis this year. So that sparked the controversy. That really did well, I should say that was the start of all the drama that led to our creation and a lot of concerned members. Now, I think it's interesting to note too that in this last year's election, Oliver North was up for re-election within the board of directors. He was the highest voted for candidate of the last election, with 120,912 people voting for him of the 145,920 that submitted ballots. That's 83% of voting eligible NRA members submitting ballots that voted for Oliver North. That's huge. That was more than Ted Nugent, for crying out loud.
Yeah, it's really kind of surprising. Was Ted number 2?
He was.
He was number 2, right? Yeah, and it was a little bit of a margin, I think, between the two of them. It's really surprising that more people knew and wanted Ollie North than they wanted Ted Nugent. I don't know. I just find it interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up real fast because it's just very interesting. Let's see. I've got it in here somewhere, or at least I think I can do a screen share real fast. Yeah, or maybe not.
With your technology, yeah. But yeah, that's really interesting that so many people, about 80%, voted for Oliver North. Oh yeah, there you go. You got it right there.
Right. So this is the information from the 2019 Committee on Elections for the National Rifle Association. And there's Oliver North right at the top of the list. I mean, he beat a lot of people. For example,
him and Ted were actually pretty close, huh?
Yeah, they were close.
Like 1,000.
Colonel Allen B. West was number 4 on the list with 105,973 votes. Marion Hammer, ironically enough, 98,930. And of course, one of the heroes of Benghazi, Mark Geist, who we got to hang out with at the fall board meeting, he had 84,000. So many voting eligible members of the NRA had voted for Oliver North. And now we're seeing this crazy drama unfold with the NRA suing Oliver North. Before we continue on, we've got to introduce Mr. David Cross. Mr. Anthony, would you please introduce our latest guest?
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we will return to the Oliver North discussion in just a moment. Joining us now is David Cross. Now, we had talked a little bit about our latest initiative to get volunteers across the nation together to get these petitions going, to actually get bylaw amendments on the NRA ballot for 2021 is when it'll have to be. And unfortunately, it has to be for 2021. And when these amendments get on the ballot, then all NRA voting members will have a chance to have their say on them. and there's nothing the board can do. There's nothing the board can stop them. That's the idea. Okay. So we've got attendance and term limits for sure that we're going to be running petitions around on. Now, there's a man who's going to be coordinating all of our volunteer efforts nationally. He's going to be working straight with us on the board, and his name is David Cross. This is him joining us right now. David, I'll let you take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm super excited to be a part of what you guys have started. I'm a lifetime NRA member. I really want the same thing you guys want. That's a strong, effective NRA, and like you guys and the guys watching, that's been an issue lately. So I'm happy to help out what you guys have started and get this grassroots movement going, get it off the ground, and so I'm going to work really hard to make that happen. Quickly, a little bit about me. I live in Northern Virginia, probably about 15 minutes from NRA headquarters, so I can go down there and knock on the door anytime I'd like, although they're going to ignore me. Yeah, so I've got a background in business. I started a business about 15 years ago, an IT company. Started it just myself, grew it to a larger organization. Still am the CEO now. So I've got a bit of experience leading people and setting goals and accomplishing those goals, and I hope to bring some of those skills and assets to our group here. I'm super motivated about what you guys are doing. The Second Amendment is, like all of us on this call, it's critical, I think, to the Constitution, to the nation. It's the most important freedom because, like we all know, it ensures all the others. So I'm very passionate about that, and I'm really, really happy to be a part of what you guys have started. So I'm going to work real hard to make sure we get the NRA members' voices heard, and start with that grassroots level and get that message out there.
Awesome. Yeah. So like Dave just said, he started and built up an IT company on his own. The man's an entrepreneur. He started that up. He's got a whole bunch of employees. He's been successful now for 15 years. So he knows how to build a team. He knows how to set goals. He knows how to hold people accountable and to get things done, which is what we wanted for this position. And I think David is the man to bring that to us. And yeah, so that is David Cross. Ron, did you have anything to ask him?
Absolutely. Of course, we're kind of focusing on Oliver North right now because he's such a polarizing figure. I mean, you love him or you hate him. And 120,000 plus voting eligible members sought to vote for him, and now he's being demonized with a lawsuit and repeated attacks from the NRA. David, what do you think? What are your opinions on Oliver North?
Well, Oliver's, he's certainly got the name recognition. I mean, his reputation precedes him. Going back to the Reagan-Iran-Contra years, that's where he first became well known, and he's been known since then. I'm curious, was he the shortest NRA president in, I'm sure, recent history, if not maybe ever?
I think he and Pete Brownell both had very, very short tinctures. That would be roughly the same. And of course, Pete Brownell was right before Oliver North, and Pete Brownell is no longer, he resigned entirely from the board of directors. So both of those guys, were, I guess you would call them failed presidents of the NRA. I'm not quite sure. Perhaps one could argue that Oliver North shed a lot of light on some of the malfeasance and improprieties that is perhaps ongoing in our NRA. So, oh man, I think it was Frank Tate earlier this week that, when we were talking about him in our Friends of Save the Second Facebook group, I believe Frank said something along the lines of Oliver North had done all of the right things in the wrong way, at least in regards to how he was approaching the malfeasance and whatnot. Now, I'm not sure if that's the case. Perhaps only time will tell with the lawsuit, but oh my goodness, that's, a very short presidency, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I know, like you guys were talking about, he got the highest number of votes. I'm sure, name recognition plays a huge part in that voting, because the NRA doesn't exactly give you tons of information on who you're voting for. You get the little, half paragraph blurb in the magazine. And I like kind of, one thing you guys have on the website is the, board of directors survey. And I think when we start to get them to answer those questions, the members can really see how these individual board members come down on these, specific issues. So more accountability to the members would be huge in making these votes more meaningful than just simply name recognition.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the problems now that we're seeing, though, is that board members are just silent, absolutely silent, and that's most likely as a result of these lawsuits. In fact, one of the reasons, the largest reason that we're focusing on Oliver North this week is a federal court had denied him indemnification. So yeah, this is kind of deep lawyery stuff. I'm going to try to give an analogy. We all know Captain Sully, the U.S. Airways pilot who landed in the Hudson. Right now, Captain Sully was not sued. He was given indemnification from landing in the river, even though there were injuries involved, under his watch. And the reason is, of course, well, he was doing his duty. He was doing his duty as a pilot, and made the best choice that he could have made at that time to land in the Hudson. And regardless of everything being all right at the end of the day, he could have been in legal jeopardy in some cases. Most people who are doing their duties aren't. They're not liable for damages. In this case, Oliver North was the president of the NRA. He's still a board of director. And so with the NRA suing him, he was seeking to have essentially the NRA pay for his legal bills, as what any director would have happen. For example, if a director was sued, I'll just make something up, if he was sued because he had an AR-15 and or something, I don't know, make something up, right? The NRA could come to his defense and pay for his legal bills because he was, that person was in their duty, doing their duty as a board member or something of that nature. In this case, the judge said, absolutely not. And so that sets a precedent now where any of the board of directors who would speak up aren't going to be compensated, and they're going to be paying for lawsuits right out of their own pocket. Anthony, it seems like some of our resignations that we had happen were understanding that very fact. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why, at least partially, some of these resignations happened. They didn't want to be found personally liable for anything that's going on here, because they're watching what's happening to Oliver North. Now, granted, Oliver North probably has a couple of bucks. He's probably worth a little bit after all of his time with Fox News, and there's some other stuff he did, but I'm sure he's worth a couple of dollars. Still, this is going to cost him major money, a lot of money. And if he loses the case, he will go bankrupt. That's guaranteed. There's no way he has enough money to pay what he would end up losing. So nobody else wants to get involved there. And I think there was even a quote from Brewer somewhere, and I can't find it, but it was something to the effect of, we are going to continue to aggressively go after, what did it say, Ron? Did you know the quote I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Go for it.
This is William Brewer, who is the representative, the legal counsel for the NRA. I mean, he's made something of a monopoly for legal counsel within the NRA, and that's a different story entirely. But he was quoted just after the judge denied Oliver North indemnification. He said, William Brewer said, "The NRA will continue to hold Lieutenant Colonel North and others accountable for actions taken in pursuit of their own self-interest. The association will stay on the principled path in support of its constitutional freedoms and those of the million members it serves."
There it is. It's that we will hold others accountable for things that happen in their own self-interest. So that's just another threat, one more threat towards any other director who would dare to step out of line, I think. So I don't think there's any help, any hope we could expect from the board of directors as a whole to do anything at this point. Certain ones there that just don't give a rat's behind are going to keep talking.
And let's dive a little bit deeper into William Brewer and what he has to say. Of course, David Cross was with us at the fall board meeting, and just after the fall board meeting, the NRA had launched its website, nralegalfacts.org.
Mhm.
And in this particular updated on October 10th letter, the legal landscape is the title. NRA achieves a victory in the lawsuit against former NRA President Lieutenant Colonel North. A victory. Now, that's interesting wording. My understanding is, of course, Colonel North could appeal and it could be overturned and he later gets indemnification. I certainly don't know how all this legalese stuff works, but they're talking about a victory here, achieves a victory. Okay. This is not the victory that I'm wanting as a pro 2A guy. I want to see, national reciprocity. I want to see bump stocks, not, reclassified as machine guns. I want to see, in my state of Colorado, magazines not be limited to 15 rounds for transfer. This is often left field, and it kind of frustrates me that we have this going on. And of course, Brewer has been given millions of dollars, to fight, one of the most highly voted for persons that are on the board of directors. Now we've got Mr. Rob Pincus joining us now. Mr. Pincus, what are your thoughts on Oliver North and all of this hullabaloo?
Well, I've been listening. I'm headed north. I've got to get up to the range here in St. Augustine before 4:30. But I wanted to stop and join in our weekly podcast. And Oliver North, to me, is always been a controversial figure. You guys have talked about it. I kind of cringed, honestly, when he became president because I felt like he was very much playing into the status quo. Remember, I've been concerned with the status quo at the NRA for a lot longer than we've been talking about it with Save the Second, and from a lot longer than Oliver North was talking about it publicly. So I was actually pretty shocked and very pleased with the action that he took. So I know that you mentioned that Frank Tate said he did the right things the wrong way. I don't know that there's a right way, and even in this last week, I've talked to a couple of directors. One director I had a long conversation with that I haven't really had much conversation with over the last couple of years. And it just seems like what I think Pete Brownell was going through, which is, seeing the problems and wanting to change it, but not having any idea how to do it. He chose not to serve out his second term. And David, to your question, Oliver North did not even fill out or serve out his first term. So I guess that was a little bit shorter than Brownell. But before he left, he made sure that things were confronted. Were they confronted as smoothly as they could have been? Would it have been better if he'd have just made a public statement instead of having private letters get leaked? That's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. I don't know, but I'm glad he did something. And I think the things he was trying to do were the right things. Yeah,
man. So our friend John Richardson on the blog onlygunsandmoney.com, he made an article about this today. I want to read you the last paragraph of this, and you should go and read the whole article. But in the last paragraph, it says, the case was on the surface about whether Colonel North was entitled to indemnification or reimbursements of his legal bills incurred. Below the surface, you have a very successful effort to get rid of Chris Cox, who was a potential successor to Wayne LaPierre. It also consolidated the hold that Brewer has over LaPierre by damaging those who are independent of Brewer or who oppose him. You see more and more of that coming out as time has passed. I could not agree with that more. It seems like anybody that had a name or spoke out against Wayne LaPierre in any way, or even had the support behind them, such as Chris Cox, is either out of the way or being what would you call it, attacked? I mean, like, for example, Marion Hammer attacking Dwayne Liptek and being a part of the naughty list, for board members being removed from their committee assignments. Strange times that we're in. Mr. Cross, what do you think about that those people that are leaving, such as Chris Cox and the 3 resignations and of the board of directors? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, before I got involved with Save the Second, I was, what brought me to the organization to begin with was I had concerns about the messaging that was coming out of things like NRA TV, and it seemed to be getting away from Second Amendment issues and more towards broad governmental issues that weren't Second Aid related. And then, I started doing some research. I came across Adam Kraut's page, and I started reading his platform and some of the things he called for, which were similar to yours. And then when I saw directors leaving, I thought, okay, well, great, maybe Adam will join the board now. But then, Adam went in a different direction. I understand why he made that decision. So it's tough when you see like people who could fight for change or leaving the board, but then at the same time, you understand their reasons why they're doing that, because, with these things with Oliver North, et cetera, coming up, they're concerned about their personal financial status, to say the least. So it's tough.
So let's go to the comments real fast on Facebook. Clover Tack Productions asks, the disconnect is baffling. How can it be called self-interest when they are asking questions the members they represent are asking themselves? And of course, the self-interest is in quotations right there, because he's referencing exactly what Brewer said, how they're going to hold people accountable for their self-interest motivations and whatnot. Anthony, that disconnect is really crazy. Does that smell of something fishy to you?
The disconnect is baffling. How can it be called self-interest when they're asking questions the members they represent are asking themselves? Yes. So this is entirely the entire reason why we're here is because we're asking these same questions ourselves. To call it self-interest is one of the most telling things about Brewer's entire strategy, and that is to focus on those directors and to punish them and to keep them under his and LaPierre's thumb as best he can, regardless of anything else being said. Because he calls it self-interest, which is BS as far as I can tell. That's just very, very telling of their strategy, and their strategy is to hold them down under their thumb.
Now, Rob, you and I had been served subpoenas. Yeah, thanks. I guess courtesy of the Brewer Law Firm. I mean, this just smells weird, doesn't it? What do you think?
Well, it's a classic case of the pot calling the kettle interested in their own ambitions, right? I mean, this is to hear from Brewer, who has single-handedly come in here and just wreaked havoc with NRA budgets, NRA agenda, with apparently the entire thought process that Wayne LaPierre is going through in response to the New York Attorney General's office at first, but now on a wide scale, just at a massive scale across the organization is amazing, right? So it serves his purpose very well to say, oh, those guys aren't interested in the organization, whether it's us or whether it's the board members or whoever. Make no mistake that it is a more locked down situation at the NRA now than it was a year ago. It's a more lockdown situation for Wayne LaPierre and for Bill Brewer than it was 6 months ago. And don't get demoralized by that, right? This is that it's going to get worse before it gets better that everybody was predicting. You basically have three groups on the board. You've got the groups that the group of people that is still incredibly loyal, whether it's out of self-interest or naivete, or they really sincerely believe what they're doing, which I think is a little naive, in full support of Wayne LaPierre and anything Wayne wants. A lot of that is the cronyism. A lot of that is protecting their legacy, right? They've backed the guy for 20, 30 years. They've got to stick with the horse that they put in the race. And then there's another group that really doesn't want anything to do with this, right? And we've seen some of them resign. We've seen some of them just remain silent. But for the most part, there are people who are nodding at the status quo. They're also nodding at the concerned members. They're nodding at us, and they're off doing their things on the sidelines. The Carl Malones, the Tom Sellecks that never get involved, but also some of the people that I think would love to be involved. We know who some of them are, and quite frankly, I think they're torn. Julie Golub's probably the perfect example of the person who did not want to get involved in the politics, didn't want to get into the business side of what was going on, and she chose to resign her position and a loss of a great person from the board because she really was there to focus on the good stuff, the positive stuff. I look at a Kim Rhodey. She's there for the good stuff, the positive stuff. She's involved in a lawsuit or a legal issue in California, but at the same time, she doesn't show up to the meeting. She doesn't show up to do the business of running the NRA, right? And then you've got a very small and an ever smaller group of people that I really sincerely believe care about the organization itself much more than they care about their own interests or the interests of Wayne LaPierre and Bill Brewer and the old guard. And unfortunately, we know we've lost some of those people as casualties to the actions of Bill Brewer and the financial threats and the threats to their personal futures in the industry if they had maintained their positions, or if they had maintained their vocal positions. Look at like Alan West. I haven't heard from him for months, even though he was one of the most vocal critics. Buzz Mills spoke up right before the board meeting. Haven't heard from him in a couple months now, right? So where are the vocal voices for change inside the board? They have been effectively silenced for the time being, and that's unfortunate. And that's why what we're doing at Save the Seconds, I think, even more important than it was 3-4 months ago.
Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely agree. And it makes me wonder if at the next board of directors meeting, which is going to be in January, the second week, or that first/second week of January, if that's going to be more of a line in the sand moment where you see maybe, Buzz Mills show up and Alan West show up. Now, of course, Alan West is running for I believe it's a seat in Texas on the Senate. I'm not sure. But there's so many of these guys that could, if they wanted to rally, they could definitely make a difference. And man, that's a big deal. Now for us at Save the Second, right? We're not, we don't have crazy aspirations. We understand that this is a systematic problem. And so we have to fix the system, which is of course why we have 5 goals. Yeah. 5 simple goals that any reasonable, prudent person would say, wow, that's a great idea. Like such as a smaller board, right? A smaller board, instead of having 76 directors, having say half that. And of course we're suggesting 31. Term limits. My goodness gracious, term limits. What a novel idea. So we don't have people that are on the board taking up space for, over 3 decades, which in some cases we have. Director attendance. My gosh. Is it too much to ask people to show up? And of course, our petition, was pretty much, shrugged off. We'll see if that plays any more in the January board meeting. Member engagement, man, we've definitely got to get the members going. Which, of course, David, man, that's. First of all, David, I really, 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 really like you. Your car is awesome. It was awesome to hang out with you in Virginia, man. But oh my gosh, having people, get together and motivated to make these changes, and then of course trying to hold the NRA to an exclusive 2A focus, man. That's exactly what we're all about. It's just stuff reasonable persons would think about. Anthony, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, let's talk about a couple of them that are pretty easy to understand here. I wanted to talk about, now, like I said before, we're going to be passing petitions around pretty soon to get these things on the ballot. Let's talk about the specific effect that term limits would have. Term limits are a lot of people are familiar with. There's a lot of calls for them in the United States Congress. Most state legislatures, local legislatures all have term limits, and there's a reason why they have term limits. It's so that you have turnover, you have churn, and people cycle in and out, so that you constantly get new ideas, new people that are evolving with the culture. Now, the problem is in firearms culture, there's a pretty good divide. There's gun culture 1.0, for lack of a better term, which is what a lot of the NRA directors and the executives belong to, in my opinion. And then there's gun culture 2.0, for lack of a better term. 2.0 is probably what we more belong to. We like AR-15s, we like suppressors. We understand why banning bump stocks was a bad idea, even though I do not own one, I don't want one. I understand why banning them was a bad idea. We understand why things like red flag laws, at least all the ones that I've seen written and the ways they're written, are bad ideas. Okay. Now we understand all these things, and we support things like taking suppressors off the NFA. Okay. I personally don't think Wayne LaPierre has ever talked about that. So there's a big divide between gun culture 1.0 and 2.0. Now, something like term limits would get a lot of those people who've been stuffed on that board forever off the board. So people complain all the time, well, the NRA is pro-gun control. They're just a bunch of FUDs and this and that, right? They're just a bunch of guys with overpriced, over-under shotguns that like to shoot clays. That's it, right? Okay, so we hear these kind of complaints all the time. If you want to change that and you want to take the 5 million plus or minus most powerful gun rights organization in the United States and turn them more into a more modern culture of people, then term limits is what's going to help with that, because we will cycle out the board. We will cycle out a lot of those people that don't care about your right to own an AR-15, and we will replace them with people who do, just simply because people get older. They right, they get older, they cycle off the board, they get into their 70s or 80s, been on the board for 20 years. Okay, we're going to replace you with somebody new, and that's what happens. So that's the point of term limits. The term limits are going to address those issues that people have with the NRA. It's also going to get people on there who aren't as embedded into any sort of business relationships with the NRA. They're not going to be held hostage by sponsorships, things like that. It's new blood. Very important. Very, very important. And now we'll go to the second one that I really like is attendance. Yeah, Neil Shera just put a comment here. It says the NRA has never publicly supported or pushed for the deregulation of suppressors. Yeah, I think that's correct. I've never heard them push for the deregulation of suppressors, and they should be. That's a big one. Especially that hearing act that was just in Congress. I would have loved to have seen them jump behind that, since apparently Wayne LaPierre can call the president anytime he wants, quote unquote. The second one is attendance. This is also a very big one, because with new blood, with new people in the board, compelling them to attend will cause them to become active. Now, there's people like Ted Nugent who didn't show up for God knows how many meetings, at least like 10 meetings. He didn't show up. And he kept getting reelected, of course, because he's Ted Nugent. But the last couple, he's shown up because he realized, oh man, I screwed up. I should have been here this whole time. I should have been paying attention. I should have been doing something. And he showed up. To his credit, he showed up, and he's been putting some stuff on social media that I like, and he's been coming around. And that's one of the things that attendance will not allow to happen. Okay, you won't allow people to rule in absentia anymore, so they'll have to be there. They'll have to look at the issues, and all that new blood I was just talking about is going to be there, constantly checking it out on every at every meeting. So that's why those two, they go hand in hand, and I think they're extremely important. So there's a couple of thoughts on it.
Yeah, and like we thought, the meeting when Ted does show up, he speaks up, right? He spoke up for us on our behalf. So we need, and we all know Ted is passionate about the Second Amendment, and that's why we really need him at these meetings, because when he shows up, he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. He's not just going to be a yes person to the officers. He'll speak his mind. So we're glad that he is showing up.
Man, that's absolutely right. I apologized to him to his face, and I was so happy to eat my previous words. I'd been a huge critic of Mr. Nugent, Mr. Ted Nugent, of course, and man, just seeing him there at the fall board meeting, it just made me so happy. And he was asking the same questions that we are asking. So it's nice to see that change, that turn. I wish we saw more of it from, the other 76 seats on the board of directors. And of course, with the attendance, it's a big deal. On our website, of course, you can see that only 22% of the board was, 22% of the board was absent for at least 30% of the meetings, and 4 board members didn't even attend a single meeting at all. One of those, of course, was Marion Hammer, who is now attending meetings. We saw her at the fall board of directors meeting, and she was at the annual meeting this year as well. So not only have we inspired those that would want to see reformation, we've also inspired the old guard to, unfortunately, defend themselves. And so it kind of stinks that we're seeing people dig their heels into the sand and call us Bloomberg operators and ridiculousness like that. Christopher Dover says, letting go of power, if you love the power, is very hard to do. Boy, ain't that right? My goodness gracious. Yeah, folks, we need you to be involved. the other day I was doing some reading about John F. Kennedy, and his famous speech. It's not what your country can do for you; it's what you can do for your country. And very similarly, it's not what the NRA can do for you; it's what you can do for the NRA. Now, you could take that a step further. It's not what the NRA can do for your Second Amendment rights; it's what you can do for your Second Amendment rights. And there is a rally coming up. Now, have you guys heard about this, Anthony? There's this rally.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about this. So let's talk about it. There's a pro-gun rally coming up November 2nd. November 2nd, taking place at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. I do want to preface this by saying this is not Save the Seconds rally. I just want to put that out there. So not our rally. We're not sponsoring it, but we are attending. Okay. You should come to the rally as well. And here's why. Okay. Number one, I'm giving a speech. Okay, well, maybe that's not the number one reason, but it is a reason. Okay, number two, this is kind of grassroots at its most basic level. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and this is where we get beaten all the time by citizen disarmament extremists. Okay, these are the guys that they show up to rallies all the time. I'm looking down in Denver just on Friday, and there's this huge climate change rally. Okay, a lot of them are the same people that go to both of them, and they show up there in hordes. Okay, why are we not showing up in hordes? This is something that we need to do. We have to show up. We have to get involved. Now, look, if you're within driving distance, you got to show up. There's no excuse. Okay, and driving distance is 6 to 8 hours. All right. That is driving distance. That's not that hard. I'm a truck driver. I can drive 10, 11 hours a day. It's not that hard. Okay. If you're within that sort of driving distance, come. You have to come. All right. Now, if you're further away and you got to fly, it can be expensive. I get it. If you can afford it, be there. All right. Somebody can watch your dogs for a night. Somebody can watch your cat. Somebody can feed them. Somebody can watch a kid for 2 hours while you attend, whatever it's going to take. Excuse me, it's a 3-hour rally. While you attend, whatever it's going to take. You have to find reasons or find ways that you can get there rather than reasons that you can't be there. All right. That's November 2nd, the Capitol in DC, and their website is secondamendmentrally.com. That's 2ND. amendmentrally.com, and on Facebook there's the link down below. It's 2A Rights Rally, facebook.com/2A Rights Rally. I think it's called Rally for Your 2A Rights is the name of the page. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. One of the first rallies that I ever attended, actually, I met, ironically, Anthony Garcia at. I'm new to this whole activism stuff, guys. So if it's a first time for you to attend a rally, man, just freaking do it. Do it. I went to the Rally for Your Rights rally in Denver, and it was ironic. My kids were playing with Anthony's kids. We didn't even know each other at the time. So it was just a funny thing, man. And it's always a small world. And there's usually some very good speakers. Mr. Pincus is back with us. Hey, Rob, so I think you're going to speak at this rally, right?
Just send your note in the chat saying, I'm almost to the range. Keep me backstage. But since I'm here, if you guys can hear me, yeah, I am. I'll be one of the speakers. We've got over 24 speakers at this rally. It's really an incredibly wide spectrum of people, a lot of different demographics, a lot of different perspectives on the Second Amendment and on why something like this rally is important. We've released one batch of names. Another batch of names is going out tomorrow, but Maj Toure is on there. Eric from Iraq Vet 8888, he's going to be there. John Patton actually just put out a big video on the Gun Collective. He's going to be one of our speakers. Carrie Sloan from We the Female, Diane Muller from everybody knows her from the hashtag Doing Something, right? We're hashtag Doing Something with this rally. She spoke at the federal hearings a couple of weeks ago and talked about how she was not going to comply with an assault weapons ban if one was enacted. Of course, that made national headlines, and she'll be there speaking. It's just a great group of people, and it's what I love about this. Couple things. One, it really is a diverse group. It's a lot of new guard type gun rights advocates. It's not a lot of the old guard type people. I may be one of the older people speaking there. Hickok 45 is going to be there. He's going to be speaking. He may be older than me a little bit, but a lot of people don't know of him being around this community for 5, 10, 15 years as an advocate, right? He's been doing gun reviews and talking about guns, but he's going to be there speaking as a gun rights advocate, which is pretty cool. And he's definitely part of the new media of the gun world. So it's an amazing collection. That's the first thing I like. The second thing I like about it is that this is not being organized by any one group. There's not one person taking responsibility. In fact, most of the people involved in this are doing it anonymously. All the funding is anonymous. There's no organization, there's no company, there's no sponsorship. And Jeff Knox and I have sort of stepped out of the shadows a little bit to help rally some of the other speakers. But for the most part, this is being run by concerned American gun owners for concerned American gun owners.
Man, that's awesome. And just looking through the Facebook for Rally for Your 2A Rights, I mean, there's a lot of people already spoken out. It looks like NRA Board of Director, Mr. Calandro is going to be there. Hey, I mean that might be a good chance for us to shake his hand and say, hey, man, appreciate what you're doing on the board. Hope you would do this, that, and the other. Yeah, he's an interesting cat. I think you would very much enjoy the opportunity to shake his hand. I don't think the NRA is really doing any sort of attendance, really, but obviously there's going to be a lot of persons like us who are NRA members with concerns attending the rally as well. Which, that'll be nice to at least see somebody else, take up the mantle. You mentioned Iraq veteran 8888. Oh, Eric, oh my goodness gracious, I've been watching him since he started in Hickok 45. My gosh, man, I'm silly pumped about it. I can't wait to be out there. And folks, a lot of folks are like, oh, it's going to be expensive, to get out there. Oh, yeah, maybe if you're in Hawaii or Alaska, that plane ticket would be a little bit large. But consider this is the first part of November. Your annual holiday travel season doesn't really start until mid-November. So ticket prices are usually very low just after Halloween, especially now. If you can jump on it now, it's going to be probably the lowest ticket prices that you can find. So keep that in the back of your mind. Mr.
Another thing
go for it, Rob.
Just real quick, another thing to remember is two things on that. One, on the travel expenses, you can just get yourself into the region, right? Whether you drive in or you fly in to Dulles, and then take a train. You can take the metro from Northern Virginia into DC. So you don't have to really fight the DC traffic, worry about the expensive parking, or worry about the expensive hotels. But as you said, it is off-peak tourist season. That's important too. The other thing is going back to Anthony Calandro speaking. He is speaking. I don't know. We're promoting him, and he's been promoting it through his Gun for Hire business. He is an NRA Board of Directors member, and of course, our own Anthony Garcia is going to be speaking. So we've got, an NRA board member. We've got Save the Second board member and founder, and it's just, again, that speaks to just how wide a perspective this rally is going to have.
Now, of course, David, this is like your backyard. Do you have any tips for anybody that would be wanting to attend this?
And I was just going to mention what Rob said, that you don't have to stay in downtown DC. Downtown DC can be expensive. The DC's got a really great subway system. So anywhere in the Northern Virginia, Maryland suburbs, you can stay. November is a great time of year in DC. It won't be hot. It won't be really cold. It'll be maybe just a little bit cool, depending on how the weather goes. There's lots to do in the DC area, so you can definitely make it a weekend or a long weekend. Obviously, if you've never been to the Capitol, a lot to see there, and there's a lot of nightlife, et cetera, in the area as well if you want to stay a few more days. So a lot to do in this area.
Man, guys, I think that's going to be like our shortest episode ever. Let's go ahead and start wrapping it up. Final thoughts, and tell me your final thoughts, and tell me what firearm you have shot, at the latest time, or the earliest time. How about that? Yeah, getting my tongues mixed up. Anthony, go.
Final thoughts. Show up to the rally, get involved, check out our volunteer page, come and help us put out these petitions to actually change the NRA. This isn't just like a theory. This is something that's actually going to happen, but we need your help, and it will actually happen with your help. As far as the last firearm that I shot, it would be the gun that I just bought for Carrie. It's the SIG, the little one, the 365 XL.
Very cool, man. I want to shoot the XL. I still haven't got to yet. Rob, tell me, hey, man, you're walking into the building. Give me your final thoughts and the firearm that you shot last. Rob.
Sorry about that. I was muted. So I will say, of course, definitely head to the rally. That's important. We want to make sure that everybody gets there. I am actually at the range right now. SecondAmendmentRally.com. One of the reasons that it's important to go there and register is because obviously we have a lot of people that are interested in sort of tracking the progress. A lot of people are, probably making a decision on to attend, whether or not there's only going to be, a couple thousand. There's going to be 5,000. If it's 10,000, and it's truly like this incredible landmark of firearms rights history, which I think it very well could be. A lot of people are going to want to be there. So registering, if you're showing up at the Facebook page and saying on the event page, absolutely you want to go, that's going to help. Registering for the email list is also going to let us get you the latest information. Some of that will be travel information. I think Jeff Knox actually just made an arrangement for people to save some money on their hotel as well. So that's pretty cool. As far as the last firearm that I have shot, well, we're going to go ahead and make sure that that is about to be the Save the Second Emblazoned Black Collar Arms build. This is a suppressed 300 blackout. And just bear with me here for a second. We'll make sure it is the last firearm that I have, in fact, fired. And you guys can bear witness to that now that I'm here at the range. Deal?
Absolutely.
All right. And you guys can go ahead to David while I get the gun loaded.
All right, David, what's final thoughts, man? Go for it.
Yeah, just encourage everyone to go to savethe2a.org/volunteer to volunteer for a grassroots program. So that's what I'm here to do, and I really want as many people as possible to sign up because we got a lot of work that needs to get done, and the more people, the better. The last gun I fired was the Glock 34 I purchased about 3 weeks ago. I've got a light and a laser for it behind me and can't wait to get on and take it to the range.
Man, that's awesome. All right, man. Come on, Rob. Send it. Yeah.
Wow.
It's been sent.
Oh, I love
Save
it.
the second right there. Pretty cool deal from the black collar guys.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Well, it's even better to
See you guys.
not need Air Pro. Hey, take care, Rob. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, buddy. Yeah, and just to echo that, guys, I mean, if this turns out to be like a really historic event, you will kick yourself in the rear for not having shown up. So do everything you can to show up. A lot of folks, think, well, why is my presence going to matter? Well, guess what? As Alan Turing said, and I mentioned this quote last week, sometimes it is the people no one can imagine anything of who do the things no one can imagine. Folks, you are responsible for your own safety and your rights. The NRA is not responsible for your rights. I mean, hey, you need to take ownership of this. If you can be out there, be out there. If you can change your NRA, change your NRA. Make it better, make it strong, make it effective, make it amazing. How about that? And with that, folks, thank you very much for listening. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. Website is savethe2a.org. Right there at the bottom, savethe2a.org. And from all of us at Save the Second, who are volunteers, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.